some hope to die.
By these 50 countries, differing so much in race and religion, in language and culture.
It is a big idea, a new world order.
Well, I know they're lying. They tricked me once, but they're not going to trick me twice. The time is now. Welcome back to the Professor Penn podcast. David Penn, your host. Glad to be with you as always on this Tuesday night, the 22nd of July, for episode number 222, What is Truth? Obama and Trump. Lots going on. I want to start out with something that one of my long-term community participants, I like to call him AR-15, it's Alpha Romeo 15, put into the live chat this past Thursday night when we had on Richard Baris. And if you are a Minnesota Republican Party officer or elected official, please go back and find episode number 221 with Richard Baris, the noted pollster who opined about his findings about what is the new right, what are the important voters, and how are we going wrong here in Minnesota. So please go back and watch that if you're in the party. And it was a very interesting conversation. To summarize, we got to figure out who our target market is as a party. We're marketing to the wrong people, which leads to perpetual defeat. When we get our focus on the target market and then adjust our message for those customers, the voters, we're going to find a different future for the Republican Party in Minnesota. But I do want to read this clip because it's a great introduction to the subject matter that we're going to talk about this evening, what is truth? I want to thank Alpha Romeo 15 for sharing this. Do not worry about right. Do not worry about wrong. We will tell you what is right and what is wrong. Do not stop and do not go. We will tell you which way to go. Do not worry about lies. Do not seek the proof. We will tell you what is the truth. And that short, what would you call that?
I'd
Poem?
call that, yeah, that's a poem.
That's a poem, right? Thanks, Tanner.
Did you write that?
No, that's
AR. I guess I was asking that. AR. If you're in the chat, comment down below.
Put that
Did you
in the
write
chat,
that?
and I captured that, and I thought, wow, that just, don't worry about lies. Do not seek the proof. We will tell you what is the truth. And that's the information war, and that's where we sit today. I'll give you a quick experience that I just had several podcasts ago. I commented that Senator Tim Sheehy from Montana was the recipient of a very large contribution from AIPAC, the American Israel Political Action Committee. And I keep my notes and I screenshot stuff because, hey, that's just what we do. And I looked back the next day because I thought, man, that's a lot of money for a first-timer. And I looked back to the exact same place. This was after the podcast had posted, and AIPAC was still a contributor, but it was for a different number. And I thought to myself, how can the same website change in 3 days from when I wrote the script to the day after I presented the podcast? And I started thinking about digital information. And, I said, well, maybe I should go to the FEC. Now, I don't have researchers. So there's only so much time I have to do, check my facts and double check. And then I started thinking, well, how do I know which number is correct? Or maybe neither number is correct. Or maybe the FEC website is not correct. Because let's just remember, that's a government website. Oh, I'm supposed to trust that, right? Like Remember the Maine, the Gulf of Tonkin incident, weapons of mass destruction, and maybe even onto this drama about the nuclear program in Iran. I mean, we're stuck with a situation where we have to consider the grounds and nature of knowledge. We're living in a new age, and it's my belief. This is an idea that I've had recently, that when we can't rely on information that we're getting digitally because we're awash with facts. There's facts everywhere. Now, a fact has to be organized. A system of facts have to be organized to become knowledge. And for knowledge to be meaningfully applied, it has to become part of a wisdom. And when you get this tremendous, I guess it's sensory overload of facts, just looking at my ex, you can just go through one sit down for 15 minutes and get 10 different opinions of alleged facts about the same issue. And I think this is part of the deal. I mean, it's just going to get people into the entertainment mode. It's going to get them to withdraw because there's nothing we can really stand on in this information age. And we're right back to where we started. We started out before there was information. It was just what we could develop on our own. And then we've gone through this long period, and now we're at the peak of this kind of digital information technology. And where are we at? We're right back where we started. The only thing I feel I can rely on is what I can discern. I mean, you're looking at me, and I'm talking to you, and you can look at me, and I hope you can get a sense if I'm misled or if I'm lying. And there's a difference. I mean, I can pick up some facts online and present them, and they're wrong. And it's not because I'm lying, it's because I'm reproducing a lie. And I'm going to have to guard against that very carefully. I don't want to do that. I want to try to share with you information that I believe is true and correct. And of course, that's going to narrow the scope of what I can present. I guess if you want to go to TireGet.com, buy lots of tires, go to the store, maybe one day we can have a staff of 10 researchers, and this is why we have TireGet. I mean, we have TireGet because we have to fund the operation, and we have a merry band here of valiant warriors trying to, make some progress with this information, but there's only so much we can do with the resources we have. So if you do need tires, go to TireGet, buy them, spread the word, go to the store, because that purchase, that's going to fund the expansion of what we're doing here at Free People Radio. And when we are in a moment, in my opinion, where the nature of knowledge, the grounds of knowledge, man, I mean, this is a philosophical discipline, right? Epistemology. What is a fact? What is knowledge? Well, I'm going to tell you, the only thing I know for sure right now, I hate to say this, but it's what I can share with you directly. I ask people all the time when they contact me. I just did this with some people this past weekend. I said, do you live in the Twin Cities? Can we get together and sit face to face? And this is the point. We have this digital medium for building this political action community, which is fantastic. Why are we doing this? We're doing this because we want to bring about change in our society, in our culture, because I'm going to tell you my opinion. My opinion is our culture is very sick. Our culture is sick because we're spending $2 trillion a year on the military and $2 trillion a year on the medical. And when you spend $2 trillion a year on your military, you're always going to be at war, and we are. And when you spend $2 trillion a year on managing disease, everyone's always going to be sick. So to change, not everyone, cognitive distortion, but sickness is going to be very prevalent when we spend this kind of money. And I want to see this change. This is a cultural change. We're believing things, and this goes into things we're going to talk about in just a little later tonight about all of these national security matters that involve President Trump and President Obama, because we're in Spooksville. And it's so easy to go down the rabbit hole of believing things that aren't true. And this goes back to the idea of religion or of faith. because what's true? Well, this gets into personal, um, it gets into the personal. And I want everyone to understand that when we live in this kind of a digital information age, we have to be real in our personal lives to offset that unreality. It's just unreal. We're living in a unreal environment. It's not the natural way. We're moving away, and there are people that are advocating to move away from the natural way as if that's an improvement, and it's not, in my opinion. So politically, what I'm urging all of us to do is to meet each other, to form real communities of real people that meet, that share, that strive together, that organize our communities face to face, person to person. When we do that, we're engaging in American politics. We're engaging in community organizing. We are balancing the digital with the real. And there's nothing wrong with the digital if we maintain the real. There's nothing wrong with science if we maintain some awareness of a world we don't understand. And I want to read something to you that's very meaningful to me, and I'm struggling and striving with this, and I'm going to comment on it after I'm done reading it. He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in Him I will trust. Surely He shall deliver you from the snare of the fowler and from the perilous pestilence. He shall cover you with His feathers, and under His wings you shall take refuge. His truth shall be your shield and buckler. You shall not be afraid of the terror by night, nor of the arrow that flies by day, nor of the pestilence that walks in the darkness, nor of the destruction that lays waste at noonday. 1,000 may fall at your side, and 10,000 at your right hand, but it shall not come near you. Only with your eyes shall you look and see the reward of the wicked, because you have made the Lord, who is my refuge, even the Most High, your dwelling place. No evil shall befall you, nor shall any plague come near your dwelling. For He shall give His angels charge over you to keep you in all your ways. In their hands they shall bear you up, lest you dash your foot against a stone. You shall tread upon the lion and the cobra, the young lion and the serpent you shall trample underfoot. Because He has set His love upon me, therefore I will deliver him. I will set him on high, because he has known my name. He shall call upon me, and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. With long life I will satisfy him and show him my salvation. Well, that's Psalm 91, and I want to just talk about one part of it, because when we talk about recovering the natural way, I recognize that people don't get any training in it. We're not trained in the natural way. And when this Psalm 91, when the Tanakh, when King David talks about the secret place, he who dwells in the secret place of the Most High, guess where that is? That's the place where you're not sinning, or I'm not sinning. Because sin is separation. When we sin and it separates us, man from woman, and man and woman from God. So the game, or the goal, I think, and I want to share with you, and what I'm working on, is to give up the addiction to sin. And then where are you going to find yourself? Well, if you're not separated from that world, you're automatically in it. And that's the great choice we have to make. And that's the great challenge in front of us. And that's the contretemps, or the counterbalance, to this digital world that we've entered, which really makes sin oh so very easy. And we have to work against this. I have to work against it. Many of us have to. We all sin in our own ways. And we need to understand the idea of sin and recognize what it's cost me. And I don't want to pay that price anymore. I say that as a person born Jewish. I know the Christian brothers and sisters are going to have a comment on my words there, but hey, we're all in different places. And I view this as many spokes all heading to the same hub. Could you please play this clip with Steve Bannon opining about the deep state, Tanner?
We have to see this to the end. You know, I'm a fighter, and this fight is the fight before us, because we could do all the tax cuts in the world. We could close the border for a while. We could do all these amazing things, which President Trump is doing. He's absolutely correct. He's on a roll. He's the hottest any president's ever been. We're doing it. However, if we don't get into what really tries to control the country, the deep state, and take it apart. And by the way, if we got rid of, 100,000 or 200,000 billets and people, we'd have control of this. And I mean, cut the FBI by half, cut the CIA by half, cut 3/4 of the State Department, right? Cut the Defense Department by a third. Cut every department and start cutting them in half.
This is the moment that we, the people, if we actually organize in our communities and start to go into the Republican Party and make it about the philosophy of republicanism, clip out these deep state rhinos that are, obstructing this process in their own kind of tricky ways, just waiting for President Trump to become a lame duck. If we do this work, if we cut, we get two things. Now, what are we talking about cutting? We're talking about cutting hundreds of thousands of elite, educated apparatchiks in the government, in the government apparatus. These people are educated at Harvard and Yale and Stanford and Tufts and Johns Hopkins, and they have advanced degrees, and they get hired, and they are acculturated into the post-World War II Democrat liberal order, the secular order, a non-religious order that stands on the scientific method, that stands on technology, and that is rapidly accelerating us into a world that's, in my opinion, anti-human. We're leaving behind hundreds of thousands of years of human experience as if we're going to go off and do something better. And we never got it right in the first place. So what they're saying is a bunch of folks that don't have it right are going to go create a utopia based on them not having it right in the first place. It's like building your house on sand. This was actually, predicted, and this has happened in the past. And people do this from time to time, all the time, out of our arrogance and because we don't, as a people, see the unseen world. So what Bannon is talking about is reducing, in a very kind of broadsword way, the number of people that are in government that have the same worldview and reproduce this secular humanist way of thinking about the United States of America, the Republic of the United States of America. In addition to reducing this philosophical hold on the lives and minds of the people, man, this is a real helpful thing for the budget. When you start talking about cutting the military budget by a third, you're talking about $600 billion of realized savings. To accomplish this, it's going to have to come from us. We don't have a Congress that would even consider such things. Right now, we the people are hanging over a cliff. These folks are going to come back on us. And the only way this is going to carry through to a change in our culture is if we organize politically. And I want to just share an idea that has struck me of late, that we had the Republican era of this country from 1776 until, let's say, about 1913. And then we had the progressive era, which became the post-World War II Democrat liberal order. So we've had two paradigms in the history of this country, but we've entered a third paradigm, which is the information age. And it is my belief that this polarity between the Republican order and the Democrat order is just being manipulated by the purveyors of the information age so that they can get their philosophy entrenched while we fight it out. No, no, no. We have to understand, I think, if we're human beings, either from the Democrat side or the Republican side, and I mean philosophically, that we are now facing a common challenge, and that's to maintain a well-being society. A well-being society of peace and prosperity for the American citizens. The quicker we recognize that we have a common challenge and we band together, those of us who can see it, we're going to get out of this trap of division and find unity and push back against a philosophy that is about a completely new kind of scientific reality that really doesn't have space for he who dwells in the secret place of the Most High. Could you please play number 2?
This week, President Trump issued a warning to Russia to, quote, reach a peace deal with Ukraine within 50 days or see severe tariffs levied on the country and all the nations that support it. That is getting bipartisan support, including from our next guest. Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut is working with his Republican colleagues on a strong sanctions package against Russia. And he called the president's announcement a, quote, breakthrough step. And Senator Blumenthal joins us now. He's a member of the Homeland Security, Armed Services, and Judiciary Committees. It's good to have you back on the show. Tell us about this package and how far it goes.
The president's shift, Mika, is really a milestone change in his stance on Ukraine. As you well know, he has really operated as a sort of confidant and admirer of Vladimir Putin. And the Russian leader has played him and made a fool of our country as well as the President of the United States. And now, this week, he has said that he's going to sell arms to NATO, which then would transfer them to Ukraine. And equally important, he issued an ultimatum. 50 days, there has to be a deal to end the war, or he will impose 100% sanctions, including secondary sanctions, on anybody buying the Russian oil and gas, which mirrors the sanctions bill that Senator Graham and I have been working on for 2 years. It would impose 500% sanctions on India, China, Brazil, who are the major purchasers of oil or gas, not to raise revenue for the United States, not to reshore manufacturing, which are typically the reasons for these kinds of tariffs, but they are truly sanctions to change behavior and bring Putin to the table in a serious way.
Well, that is neocon par excellence, Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut, who has teamed up over the last couple of years with Lindsey Graham, the Republican doppelganger of Blumenthal. They're the same person, only a little different, from South Carolina. They've been teamed up to try to be sure that Putin is defeated. They want to beat the Russians. They want to engage in this great power struggle. And, you know, when Senator Blumenthal goes on Morning Joe on MSNBC and sings the praises of President Trump, who he's indicated has finally seen the light, we see that there is a sea change here. Well, here's the sea change. President Trump's going for it. When they talk about these secondary sanctions, the buyers of Russian oil, the primary buyers, that would be India and China, which are two major trading partners of the United States, would be sanctioned if they continue to buy that Russian oil. And that Russian oil, when it's purchased by those two great countries, that stabilizes the economy of Russia. It allows Russia to continue this war in the Ukraine. And, President Trump, I still believe that he wants to bring about peace and prosperity for the American people, and he's going for it. I mean, I've been around quite a few presidents now, and I've never seen any administration in my lifetime that has done more to change the nature of our politics and of our culture, of our society, of our country, of the entire world in just a few short months than what President Trump is trying to do since he's been elected. The last time I think we've had a change like this was the Woodrow Wilson administration, which was in the early 1900s. And you could say, and I think would be reasonable to say, that the Wilson administration ushered in the progressive era, which culminated in the post-World War II Democrat liberal order. Under the Wilson presidency, the income tax was started. Senators were directly elected instead of being appointed. For example, Wilson championed the liberation and the suffrage of women. For example, he supported prohibition. There was many things that Wilson supported which dramatically changed the culture, not the least of which is the Federal Reserve was established during the Wilson administration. So that Wilson administration really ushered in the era of the Democrat liberal order, which President Trump is overthrowing. This Trump administration is systematically overthrowing that liberal order, and he's going for it. He's trying to bring about a peace. Well, I don't know what President Trump's going to do in 50 days, and I certainly cannot predict what what China and India are going to do in response to the threatening of secondary sanctions. We're going to find out in 50 days. And, there's a lot going on. And of all the things that are going on, that's probably the biggest buried lead, because this was an unnecessary, unforced move by President Trump. He's put the gauntlet down, and in 50 days, he's either going to impose this, come up with some kind of equivocation, or these two countries are going to back off on buying Russian oil, which is going to drive the Russians to the negotiating table. And it ties into so many other issues, like the health, for example, of the Chinese economy. So President Trump is wielding the power of America's financial might, the power of our markets, to bring about global change. And he's taken a lot of risks. I remember when President Reagan said that the Soviet Union was the evil empire. And that scared me, because I recognized that if it didn't go down the way President Reagan said it was going to go down, there could be a nuclear war. Well, this time President Trump, in a very Reagan-esque kind of a way, is threatening kind of an economic Armageddon, not just for India and China, but also for the United States of America. This would cause a complete breakdown of world trade and international relations if India and China tell President Trump the answer is no, we're going to continue to purchase this Russian oil. Let's remember that the BRICS, right? The BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, that is a strong political union amongst those countries meant to offset the power of what Putin calls the Anglo-Saxon Empire. What President Trump is doing is he's seeking to sow division in that alliance. And I'm going to hope he's doing it to bring about peace. Of course, it may not come out that way. He's trying to thread a needle here. President Trump also resumed arms shipments to the Ukrainians, which has been met with a lot of resistance on the part of the MAGA movement. he has been very clear he's not going to give the Ukrainians long-range missiles, and he has told the Ukrainians no more striking deep inside of Russia, which is a big change from what was going on under the Biden administration. So President Trump is reeling it in. President Trump has declared, I'm on nobody's side. That's a quote. But really, if we're supplying weapons to the Ukrainians, we're obviously tilted towards the Ukrainian side. However, if you listen to Sergei Lavrov, who represents the foreign policy interests of the Russian Federation, there seems to be something going on. Tanner, could you please play number 3?
Russia do not negotiate its own territory. And,
so
President Trump understands this. I mentioned already Kaja Kallas and Ursula von der Leyen, who said any deal must make sure that Ukraine is stronger and that Ukraine is on top of Russia. Look, do you need negotiators who believe in this kind of logic and who don't want to look for honest balance of interest? The Trump administration is interested in searching for a balance of interest. They sincerely want to understand better the Russian position, and they're getting this understanding. And we understand better the American position through negotiations and meetings and discussions. We only target military goals or civilian sites used by the military. President Putin expressed this for so many times.
So this clip came up just after President Trump spoke with Vladimir Putin, and President Trump was very unhappy with that phone call. He indicated that he made no progress with Vladimir Putin on bringing this war to an end, and he was quite unhappy about it. The policy U-turn of resupplying Ukraine with more weapons was met, by me. I mean, I'd like to see this war come to an end. I think it's crazy to be involved in a superpower confrontation of this nature. But President Trump is doing what he thinks is right to bring it to an end. And he was very bitter about this. He spoke bitterly about this conversation he had with Putin. And then Lavrov came right up and said, hey, we're listening to the Americans. They're listening to us. So while President Trump is unhappy about the progress, there's something going on here. So again, I've been saying this pretty regularly. There's a lot of things I could say that were critical of President Trump, and people are starting to be critical of President Trump. And I'm critical of a lot of things that are going on, but we don't have the punchline. I mean, we don't know how any of this is going to come out. I am saying when you take these kind of risks, boy, things can go funny in a hurry. On the other hand, if you don't take a risk, there's no reward. So what President Trump is doing is he's leveraging the economic power of the United States, and he is exploiting the current weakness of the Chinese economy in the hopes that, well, profit-seeking will prevail over the impulse to war. And we're going to see how that comes out. I don't think it's a bad bet, but it is a bet. And while this is going on, there's so many issues. We really didn't have a chance to do much News That Matters last week. And I was looking at the script and I said, boy, I'm just going to have to put up the stuff for the Ukraine on Tuesday, because if I try to do the Middle East stuff, there'll be no room for anything else tonight. There's that much foreign policy information that's going on every day now, because we're in a world war. And I think it's admirable for the United States of America, for we the people, to try to get ourselves out of these involvements, which are not of our own making, as we've said many times on the podcast. This Ukraine thing, it came from the British. The China thing, it came from the British. I, as an America First political activist, want my country to extricate itself from these foreign involvements and focus the great resources of our people on restoring the well-being of our citizens. And we're not going to do it when we're out gallivanting around the world like a hegemon, which is a scam and it does not last. Let's remember, everything that has an alpha has an omega. So why would we careen to an endpoint when we can proactively redeploy our resources so that they benefit our families? It doesn't benefit my family to have this going on. And what would happen if we stopped being aggressive? We have to put ourselves in the shoe of the other person and the antagonist. And when I talk like this, boy, do I get some nasty posts in response as if I'm a Putin lover or a Xi lover. I love America. I know this republic was founded to extricate us from this great game. Why are we playing it? Well, we stumbled into it because we were young and dumb. We're getting older now. There's a price for this. And is it really willing to pay this price so that we lose our freedom? Because empire and freedom cannot coexist. Prosperity and war cannot coexist. These are problems not of our own making, and we've inherited them, and let's solve them. Let's leave the world with a chance to move forward. I agree, we need to try to solve these problems, but let's not stumble in to some kind of predetermined cataclysm. We don't have to do that. We can keep our heads about us. We can think clearly. We don't have to live an eschatological outcome. That's up to us. We have free will. President Trump is pursuing this immigration policy, and we're going to talk about the one big beautiful bill in a second, which passed since I saw you last, which contains, I think, $150 or $175 billion to pursue this anti-immigration policy. And ICE is deporting people all over the country, and a lot of people that are here illegally are self-deporting for many reasons. So there's a big outflow of people that are in this country illegally. Where are they going? They're going back to Mexico and Central America. And guess what's happening? Those countries are under tremendous pressure. Mexico in particular has got a big population of people returning. They don't have jobs. They don't have places to live. They don't even have food to eat. This is putting tremendous pressure on the Mexican government. In other words, if immigration was so good, why don't the Mexicans like it? Because they're getting a real good dose of immigration now. And
I have a silly question. So you're saying the self-deporting, how does that work? Do they just go to the ICE agency and go, "Hey man, I just want to turn myself in. Can you get me a plane ride to home?"
And that's a great question, but I think when you self-deport, I think you just get on a plane and fly home, or you drive home, or you walk back across the border. I don't think these people are turning themselves into ICE.
Yeah.
Maybe they are. Maybe that's a cheap way to get home.
Yeah, maybe it really is. You just walk up and, "Hey, can I get a plane ride? I came here. I
We
want to go
need to
home."
ask about that. That's a great question. And again, digital information, it could be fake news.
Yeah.
But from what I'm reading, because I do have business in Mexico and friends in Mexico, Mexico could collapse from this. It's not a deep and rich country like the United States of America is, and it's a stratified country, and it's a country where there's a lot of potential for radical politics. At the same time that all these people are going back down there, President Trump is demanding that the Mexican government take on the cartels. And so, President Trump is, this is change. These things are not bad. I know the Mexican citizens that are hardworking, law-abiding citizens want these cartels put down, but they're so wrung into the political life of Mexico. This is not going to happen easily. No different than we have, criminality wound into our politics here in the United States. So right south of the border, our country, our ally, Mexico to the south, is feeling the effects of these policies. What are we going to do about this? How are we going to deal with Mexico and these Central American countries, which allegedly could be fake news, but from my research, a huge population of people is going back down there. So much, in fact, that there's about 700,000 American citizens living in Mexico. They call them expats. They retired there for the most part. And the Mexican politicians are blaming these Americans. They call them digital nomads. They're blaming the Americans for causing the inflation and the social disruption. There's actually been riots threatening the health and safety of these American citizens living in Mexico. Some,
So they get a dose of the same medicine and then they complain about the same thing.
yes,
That is hilarious.
it's called make Mexico first again. Yes,
That's a movement now.
yes.
That is hilarious. Okay. We got to go deeper on that. That is really funny, actually.
Well, that's why we do the Professor Penn podcast, because boy, oh boy, you never know what's going on out there unless you spend your time researching it. And those are our neighbors to the south, and we need to have a good relationship with Mexico. President Trump has already signaled that he's going to renegotiate the United States-Mexico-Canada Free Trade Agreement, the USMCA, next year. That's going to heap even more pressure on the relationship with our neighbors. But President Trump is sticking to his guns about rebuilding American manufacturing, rebuilding American sovereignty, rebuilding American self-sufficiency. And it runs through everything that we're doing here now politically. And boy, is it being opposed. It's being opposed because self-sufficiency means self-governance. Self-governance means, government's going to shrink, because you can't have self-governance when you have a giant government that's doing everything for everybody. This is a big change. This paradigm goes back to 1913, to the Woodrow Wilson administration, the start of income tax, the start of the Federal Reserve. There's a movement to decertify the Federal Reserve. This is a period of phenomenal change, a phenomenal moment in American history. We're all living here together. What are you going to do about it? What are you willing to do to save this republic? Are you willing to go join your local Republican Party, track those people down, call them, get appointed to your board, tell them that you are a Republican that wants to elect Republicans, and then go out and try to convert your friends, your family, your neighbors, your co-workers to the philosophy of Republicanism? Because that's what we got to do. This is about culture. This is about culture changing. We're in a moment of cultural change. It can be cultural evolution. It does not have to be cultural revolution. And when we do this proactively, when we love one another as we wish to be loved, well, this could be a new era in American culture and politics. Goes right into the economy. President Trump moving ahead. This is something I watch very closely because of my involvement in the tire business. And once again, if you have a chance, you need tires, your friends, your family, your neighbors, your coworkers, let them know about TireGet.com. We need your business to fund our operations here at Free People Radio. Look, there's a promo code. When you go to checkout, if you put in the promo box FPR for Free People Radio, we're going to give you an extra 3% off. Already a great deal. And I'm in the tire business, and I know it's a great deal. I wouldn't be steering you wrong. And if you need customer service, call in. You might get a chance to talk to me. We want to sell you tires so we can expand our broadcast here, our reach. But because we're in the tire business, we know what's going on for international trade. And I'm watching it like a hawk, because only 25% of the tires that you use on your personal vehicles are manufactured in the United States. That means 75% of the tires are imported. Does that seem right to you? Does that seem right to you that 75% of the car tires and light truck tires that you use are imported? How do you feel about that, Tanner?
At first, I never really thought about it too deep, but it was until I think you had painted it out for me that if we didn't have tires, how would food get anywhere? And especially being in Minnesota, we live entirely on trucks getting stuff to us. So if those tires are gone, we're screwed. So we need to be self-reliant on that
Well,
kind of aspect.
let's break this down one little bit just to refine what you're saying.
Yeah.
The tire business is broken into 3 segments: consumer tires, large truck tires that go on the semis that bring the food from the farm to the market,
Right.
and then off the road tires like your farm agricultural tractor tires. 3 segments, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now, car tires, I guess if there was some kind of a breakdown and we couldn't get car tires, we'd find a way to limp along. You need tires about once every 4 years, but your average over-the-road truck goes through 2.5 sets of tires a year. That's 18 tires times 2.5. That's a lot of rubber. You know, on those large trucks, the big truck tires, only 35% of those tires are built in the United States. And boy, if we had a breakdown, that would be trouble in River City, because you're right. We could not get product from the manufacturer or from the farm to where we could consume it. That's a big problem. So President Trump is in the process of imposing these reciprocal tariffs, and there's 2 reasons for them. 1, revenue. 2, encourage domestic manufacturing. Well, we're coming up on another big change date, August 1st. President Trump has put a line in the sand that these reciprocal tariffs are going to increase on August 1st. This past weekend, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent made the rounds on the morning talk shows, and they reinforced the idea that August 1st is the date. And people are freaking out because this, again, is the start of a new era for America. Not coincidentally, it was during the Woodrow Wilson era that the very high tariffs that had been put in place during when? During the Lincoln administration from 1861 to 1865. Very high tariffs because Lincoln was a Republican. A Republican. Republicans believe in self-sufficiency, self-governance, sovereignty. That is the Republican idea. What does the Democrat believe? One world government, one world economy, free trade. And what is the sine qua non of free trade? Trade in human beings. And guess who was the slave traders? It was the Democrats. Do we get that? Do you know that? Has that sunk in yet?
Yes, I do know that.
Did you know it before the Professor Penn podcast?
Yes, I did.
You did.
I knew that the Democrats were the party of the KKK.
They were the party of the South. They were the party that seceded from the Union.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
It's something that you would not assume.
Well, that's because in 1946, after World War II, the Republicans got all in on free trade too, because it was a smorgasbord. Because everybody in the world, other than our great United States economy, the Russian, when I say everybody, this time it is everybody. Britain, France, Germany, Russia, Japan, China, all these countries were in ruins from World War II. We had the only intact manufacturing base here in the United States. So both parties got all in on free trade after World War II. And it was an experiment to see if it could bring about peace and prosperity. And it did for a while. And then we slipped back into depravity. And now it's time for a change because it didn't work. And if it's not going to work, I mean, if we're not going to have peace and prosperity, because the price of the scam was, of course, our sovereignty. So why would we give up our sovereignty, our independence, our self-governance for a philosophy that failed? That wouldn't make any sense. And that's why the people have risen up and elected Donald Trump, and he's bringing about a great change. And it's not Trump. He is a reflection of the American people. It's about us. So these tariffs that are supposed to increase on August 1st, wow, there's some big numbers in there. Now, a few countries, for example, like Vietnam, there's been a deal with Vietnam, 20%. There's been a deal announced with Indonesia, 19%. There's been a deal announced with the United Kingdom. There have been some deals. Most of the countries just got letters in the mail that said, on August 1st, here's your rate. Now, that doesn't mean those countries couldn't continue to negotiate, but there's a lot of countries and there's a lot of negotiations. And if President Trump pulls the trigger on August 1st, there's going to be a big increase in taxation at the border. Now, You will notice that in the month of May, the most recent month we have data on, with only a 10% reciprocal tariff, we didn't have to borrow any money because we had more coming in than went out, just at 10%. And these rates are going to go way up. European Union is scheduled to go to 30%. Cambodia, 36%. Pakistan, I think it's 29%. Serbia, 36%. I could go on and on and on. Very, very high rates. People are going to say, that's going to cause inflation. And I keep saying, there's a difference between inflation and prices. And let me explain it and share it with you because this is important. Inflation is about borrowing money, printing money, and expanding the money supply. That's what causes inflation. Prices, the reshoring of our manufacturing or the taxation at the border of imported product, will cause a short-term spike in inflation. The price will go up. And then guess what's going to happen? The market's going to reset and there isn't going to be any more inflation. Do you get the difference? I'm trying to share something. It's a distinction that matters. When you continuously print money and borrow money and increase the M1 money supply, you just inflate the economy. You're inflating it constantly. Let's think about it. We borrowed $37 trillion since about 2000 in Bush, basically. What did we do? That's like not real money. That's borrowed money. It wasn't earned. It wasn't created through hard work or creativity or efficiency, workplace efficiency. No. It was just fiat currency pumped into the system. That is called putting gas in the bag. It was inflationary. And it will continue to be inflationary as long as we're borrowing that money. Now, prices go up. One time, we have inflation for 1 quarter, and then the inflation stops. It's a difference that matters. So when all these naysayers are talking about prices and inflation, it is not inflationary. It's an increase in prices, and then market forces will impact upon those prices, and prices will moderate. For example, when you come to TireGet.com, you can buy a tire that costs you $350. You can, and that same size could cost you $70. Tanner went through that when he bought tires for his vehicle.
Yeah.
Great story.
I paid less than $400 for my Camry, so I was very happy.
4 tires, mounted and balanced it out the door.
Yeah.
With a new valve stem.
And I didn't even have to talk to any of the people. I walked in, handed my keys, said my name, and they went right along. Got it back that afternoon.
Perfect for your age cohort.
Yeah, I don't want to talk to people.
You know, we're going to have to get you talking. This is a problem with politics, right? We need to talk one to another. So these tariffs are alleged to start. We're going to find out. Now, President Trump has also announced that members of the BRICS, that's Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and all the related countries, are going to get dinged an extra 10% just for the audacity of claiming they want to have their own currency. President Trump is a G. He's not going to let this thing get off the ground. And what's going to happen is all these associated countries, and there's a lot of them, for example, Bolivia, Nigeria, Cuba, Kazakhstan, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, and Uganda, just for starters, they're all going to look at this and they're going to say, wait a second, our economies are going to collapse if we don't sell in the United States. Let's take Vietnam for an example. Their whole economy is $350 billion. Let me give you a context. Texas is $2 trillion. Are we getting this? The state of Texas, one state, is a $2 trillion economy. The whole country of Vietnam is $350 billion, and 1/3 of their output is exported to the United States. So it's very unlikely they're going to stick to the brick at the expense of everybody losing their jobs, right?
Yeah.
President Trump is doing something nobody's done for a long time. His theory is you got to break some eggs to make an omelet. I think it's quite interesting. Now, let's play number 4.
American business never stops. All across the nation, folks are waking up and heading off to work. Businesses big and small are leading the way. Their addresses may be local, but they've found a way to take their business global. Thanks to their partnership with the online marketplace Alibaba, American companies are now reaching global customers. And the impact means big business for the economy. U.S. companies are creating new sales opportunities and reaching new markets with Alibaba. And those sales support more American jobs, bigger American paychecks, and the American dream. American workers and businesses thrive with Alibaba. Sell globally and grow locally. Learn more at alibabapowersbusinesses.com.
Well, I guess it's how you look at it, what your street corner is. If you don't know that, Alibaba is the Amazon of China, and Alibaba has taken credit for helping American businesses grow like they're the boss. And they spent a lot of money to promote that. I saw that for the first time on guess where? MSNBC. What a surprise. The globalist network of the Democrat. So we still have this globalist thing working. That could be on Fox News too. I mean, if you watch Fox News, I don't happen to watch it, but I wouldn't be surprised that Alibaba is also advertising there. And what a beautiful vision. American businesses can grow on a Chinese platform. So we still have this globalist idea working, and it's being redefined. And I'm not saying it won't be redefined in a way that's very positive for all the people of this planet. But underlying this thing, because that paints Alibaba in China in such a powerful position, really what's going on underneath the surface is China's coming apart at the seams economically, if I can believe the data that I'm reading. These tariffs that go back to President Trump's 45th presidency, where 25% went on, has been slowly unwinding in China. China's got a tremendous economic challenge. There's actually deflation there, which means there's way more production than there is demand for what is being built in China. And there are trade barriers being erected against Chinese production all over the world. So China's in trouble. 30% of its economy is related to real estate and real estate development and management, 30%. And there's something like 60 to 70 million new apartments that are built in China that are unoccupied, which means the price of real estate is falling like a rock. And let me tell you about the Chinese people. They can remember inflation leading to devaluation, leading to paper being worthless in recent memory. That happened when the Japanese invaded. So the Chinese people don't like to put their money in banks. They put their money, the Chinese people, we were talking, they put their savings into real estate. That's why they call it real. So when the real estate starts declining like this, there's a lot of social unrest. And they built these, what they call ghost cities and ghost towns, and I've seen them with my own eyes. They built them kind of a Ponzi scheme. They kept building and building and building and building and building and building, but there was no buyers for what they were building. And now the chickens have come home to roost. Well, let me tell you what that means, because it means something very significant. Our economy is $37 trillion in debt. Our country is coming apart at the seams also. But capital is not ideological. Capital seeks return. And when you start getting on the verge of a eschatological, apocalyptic world war, capital seeks preservation. So capital is flowing out of China in the billions every month. And where is it going? Into the United States. Why? Because President Trump is reindustrializing America. President Trump is taking actions that are going to lead to a healthier economy. President Trump is presiding over a legal system which, compared to the Chinese, seems a lot more transparent and predictable. So China is under tremendous pressure. If this is a great competition between the United States and China, follow the money. Because right now, the money's coming home to the United States of America. The trillions of dollars that was sent overseas to China going back to the 90s, even the late 80s. And I want to remind you, I started doing business in China in 1993. All the product that I sold here, I sent to China. We're talking about trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars. That money is on the way home, coming back here to be invested here, to be for the benefit of our people here, if you and I do our political organizing and get people into the Congress who demand that the benefits of this tremendous change that is going on in the worldwide economy, if these benefits accrue to you and me. And if we don't do the work, they're going to strip everything out of our pockets, and it's going to go into the pockets of a very few people. That is the importance of political organizing. President Trump and the Congress, President Trump signed into law the big, beautiful bill that the Congress passed since I saw you last. The most noteworthy part of the bill for me was the money that was allocated to the military. The military budget is now $1.77 trillion a year when you consider the interest on that expenditure. And $25 billion was allocated for the Golden Dome, another $25 billion for munitions, $16 billion for innovative technologies, that would be AI, $15 billion for nuclear modernization. Nuclear modernization means more nuclear weapons, $12 billion for U.S. military buildup in Asia Pacific, goes on and on and on and on. So I could read this for the rest of the podcast where all this money is going. There's many other things that went on in this bill. It really funds the priorities of the Trump administration. And it will generate, allegedly, a budget deficit over the 10-year life of this bill, although I can't tell. I have read over and over again how these different agencies have scored this bill. And I read how the administration opposes the characterization of the bill as causing a deficit of some $3.5 trillion over 10 years. I can't tell. I don't think anybody else can tell. But let's just say that it is going to cause a deficit of $3.5 trillion. That doesn't consider this new tariff income, which is going to be tremendous. It could be $600 or $700 billion a year. So if everything goes on as planned, really the budget should be balanced by the end of this period and the debt paid down. Here's the danger. If you and I don't organize, if you and I don't talk to our neighbors and our friends and get them involved in the philosophy of republicanism, if we don't let people know that this is about more than politicians, it's about the culture we live in, that we believe in self-governance, that we believe in freedom. Freedom. We're going to get a Democrat, and they're going to spend through all this money, including the tariff money, and the budget deficit will just continue. The debt will continue to grow. And I read just recently in the Minneapolis Star and Tribune some commentator that said it was meaningless. It didn't matter. That deficit and that debt. Because these people are stupid. And I hope you're watching me. If you want to come on, I'm not going to say your name. You're welcome to come on. But, this is stupid to believe that this debt is not going to sink the country because the bank's going to get paid. The interest payment on the debt exceeds what we spend on military, and it gets bigger every year. So we've got to get this under control. Now, of course, this big, beautiful bill did not substantially cut spending. It continued these tax cuts. And I'll tell you, there's a kind of a buried lead in there, because the way this bill is set up, the amount of money spent on the military stays under 3%. So at the same time, President Trump is demanding of every NATO partner a 5% military spend, we didn't even hit 3%. So guess what this means over 10 years? It means the unfettered global ambitions of the neocons are going to be substantially reined in by the budget and by this bill. And I know that sounds counterintuitive, that they're using this money to stop these people, but they are. Just the same way President Biden flooded all the states when he got elected, put money everywhere, caused inflation, broke the back of the middle market, flooded every state with money it didn't need, swelled state budgets, caused a tremendous budget deficit here in Minnesota, because when the Biden administration swelled all these agencies here in Minnesota, hey, they just kept spending even when the money wasn't there. That's why we have a deficit now. Well, how does that work? They're using money to achieve their goals. And the goal is to rein in the empire. And they just can't afford it. It's going to become obvious that even at $1.77 trillion, we can't maintain the same military posture as we have in the past. So guess what? We didn't get any kind of hawkish reduction in spending, at least yet. But the bill kind of prevents foreign policy adventurism. So the hawks lost, the deficit hawks lost, and so did the war hawks. We're coming back to America. Something to think about. Seems a little strange, but read the bill and you can see it for yourself. There are things in this bill that really need to get done. They're going to redo the air traffic control, for example. That border and immigration piece is huge. It's $150 billion. Education's getting reworked. There's a bunch of issues that are going on. They're using the money to create a more Republican form of governance. One thing that we're going to have to guard against, because the Democrat is not going to get out there and really talk about immigration. They're trying to demagogue the issue. They're trying to. It's not going to work. The issue they're going to demagogue is Medicaid and health care, because we're so afraid. We're afraid because we don't live in the secret place of the Most High. We're afraid. So they're demagoguing the health care issue because we've given up our self-governance. And that is a demagoguery of the highest order, because the allegation that millions and millions of Americans are going to lose their Medicaid is untrue. They're going to be asked to do something like work. The reduction of funding is to go back to the pre-COVID levels because COVID is over, for example. So we're going back to the pre-COVID levels of Medicaid funding, and Medicaid is going to grow in expenditure by 20% over the life of this bill. So, we're going to have to get good in talking to our friends and neighbors that we're not kicking millions of people off Medicaid. People aren't going to die in the streets. There's going to be a mechanism to keep people in health care if they need it. What's happening is fraud, waste, and abuse is being limited, and we're going to go to a more reasonable kind of socialized medicine, which is something that we need to think about again. We always need to think about, what does socialized medicine mean? What does that mean to spend a couple $1 trillion a year on disease management? How could we get into disease prevention? Nope, not the right way to say it. How do we get into well-being enhancement? Well, it's a change of thinking. That's what it is. Well-being is a completely different idea from disease management. Tanner, could you please play number 6?
Did Clinton lose because of the hacking?
I'm going to let all the political pundits in this town have a long discussion about what happened in the election. It was a fascinating election, so I'm sure there are going to be a lot of books written about it. We will provide evidence that we can safely provide, that does not compromise sources and methods. But I'll be honest with you, when you're talking about cybersecurity, a lot of it is classified, and we're not going to provide it because the way we catch folks is by knowing certain things about them that they may not want us to know. And if we're going to monitor this stuff effectively going forward, we don't want them to know that we know. So this is one of those situations where unless the American people genuinely think that the professionals in the CIA, the FBI, our entire intelligence infrastructure, many of whom, by the way, served in previous administrations and who are Republicans, are less trustworthy than the Russians, then people should pay attention to what our intelligence agencies say. What I worry about more than anything is the degree to which, because of the fierceness of the partisan battle, you've started to see certain folks in the Republican Party and Republican voters suddenly finding a government and individuals who stand contrary to everything that we stand for as being okay because that's how much we dislike Democrats. I mean, think about it. Some of the people who historically have been very critical of me for engaging with the Russians and having conversations with them also endorsed the president-elect, even as he was saying that we should stop sanctioning Russia and being tough on them and work together with them against our common enemies. It was very complimentary of Mr. Putin personally. Everything that happens in this town, everything that's said, is seen through the lens of, does this help or hurt us relative to Democrats or relative to President Obama? And unless that changes, we're going to continue to be vulnerable to foreign influence.
Do you believe Vladimir Putin himself authorized the hack, and do you believe he authorized that to help Donald Trump? Can you say unequivocally that this was not China, that this was not a 400-pound guy sitting on his bed, as Donald Trump says? And do these types of tweets and kinds of statements from Donald Trump embolden the Russians?
Martha, I think what I want to make sure of is that I give the intelligence community the chance to gather all the information, but I'd make a larger point, which is not much happens in Russia without Vladimir Putin.
Do the tweets and do the statements by Donald Trump embolden Russia?
Our vulnerability to Russia or any other foreign power is directly related to how divided, partisan, dysfunctional our political process is. That's the thing that makes us vulnerable. If fake news that's being released by some foreign government is almost identical to reports that are being issued through partisan news venues, then it's not surprising that that foreign propaganda will have a greater effect, because it doesn't seem that far-fetched compared to some of the other stuff that folks are hearing from domestic propagandists.
I think that it's worth going back over that 2 or 3 times to listen to what President Obama said. And this was the predicate for a Russiagate, and now we're running into a completely new spin on this, and this goes into the grounds and nature of knowledge. I'm not going to know what really happened here unless there's trials. Let's play number 5, please.
Also breaking tonight, a potential blockbuster scandal from documents released by the Director of National Intelligence today. Fox News Digital reporting the Obama administration allegedly manufactured and politicized intelligence to create the narrative that Russia was attempting to influence the 2016 presidential election. This reportedly happened despite intelligence stating otherwise. Chief Washington correspondent Mike Emanuel has some stunning details tonight, looking into it. This released today. Good evening, Mike.
Brett, good evening to you. DNI Tulsi gathered declassified documents today from before and after the 2016 election, promising they would show the American people how intelligence was politicized and weaponized by some key figures in the Obama administration. She talks about it in an interview airing on Hannity this evening.
You have some of the most powerful people in our country directly leading at the helm, President Obama and his senior-most national security cabinet, essentially making a very intentional decision to create this manufactured, politicized piece of intelligence.
According to the documents, August 31st, 2016, a Homeland Security official tells then DNI James Clapper that there was, quote, no indication of a Russian threat to directly manipulate the actual vote count. On September 9th, 2016, officials argue the presidential daily brief should make clear that Russia, quote, probably is not trying to influence the election by using cyber means to target election infrastructure. Then after the election, the tone appears to change. On December 9th, 2016, the documents reveal the Obama White House held a National Security Council Principals Committee meeting on a sensitive topic. It included then DNI James Clapper, John Brennan, the CIA director, Susan Rice, who was National Security Advisor, Andrew McCabe from the FBI, and others. After that, an email came out to Intelligence Committee leaders from an aide to Clapper saying the intelligence community was prepared to produce an assessment per President Obama's request to pull together the information intelligence agencies had about the tools Moscow used and the actions it took to influence the 2016 election. By December 14th, there were leaks saying that intelligence community officials believe, quote, with a high level of confidence, that Russian President Vladimir Putin was personally involved in the U.S. election hack. Then, on January 6, 2017, 2 weeks before the first Trump inauguration, a new intelligence community assessment was released that, according to the Office of DNI, quote, directly contradicted the intelligence community assessments made throughout the previous 6 months. Former President Obama's office declined to comment. Brett?
So we have here a clash of titans. Barack Obama representing the Democrat liberal order. In fact, he's the sine qua non of that order. And Donald Trump rolling in representing republicanism. And it looks like, at least from these allegations, like they ginned up a Russia plot to undermine the Trump presidency. I have no idea what happened. I read it. What I'm reading, I don't trust because we're in Spooksville here. So there are those people who are saying this will never come to a trial, and that may be true. And if it never comes to a trial, this is going to get ground into dust. We'll never know. And you know, when you go into a courtroom, and for those of you that have been there, you know, you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God. And if you don't believe in God, you just lie your face off. There's more lying that goes on in courtrooms than almost any place else when people give witness testimony. But the documents that are introduced, because the lawyers still have some honor about this, generally is a higher level of evidence than taking a look on X. And so if there are trials, we will get a chance to look at the evidence, the written evidence, and try to make some determination. Did the Obama administration undermine the Trump administration in a way that some are characterizing as treasonous? We won't know unless there's trials. We do know that, for example, along these same lines, the Wall Street Journal published a piece about President Trump that President Trump said completely fake news. And he sued the Wall Street Journal and the Murdochs that own Fox News for $10 billion. And there's going to be a trial. And President Trump has prevailed in some of these trials against news companies that have said and published things that are not true. So we're going to actually have a trial, and we're going to find out if President Trump sent Jeffrey Epstein a scatological birthday card. He did or he didn't. We'll find out at trial. I'm not that interested in the allegations on X because I see so many things on X I can't make sense of, because we're living in a world where the grounds and nature of knowledge are being assaulted through digital means. I ask Tanner sometimes, is this video real? And he looks at me and goes, no, man, are you goofy? That's so easy. That's AI. We've done that a couple times,
Yeah,
haven't
we've
we?
done that a couple times.
Right, because your eye is really sharp for it. We have to be sharp. We have to be discerning. We have to develop powers of discernment that come from the search for truth. We're going back to the beginning. We're going back to the pre-information age where people had to meditate, where they had to consider what they heard, what they think, what they say. Because I don't want to pass on disinformation to you. I want to try to pass on information that will improve the quality of our culture, the quality of our lives, the quality of our well-being. And lies don't do that. So President Trump has sued Wall Street Journal and its owner, Rupert Murdoch, and we're going to see about that, what really happened. And we have got the word that ex-CIA boss John Brennan and ex-FBI boss James Comey are under criminal investigation. So we're just going to have to get this stuff into what Justice Brandeis called the sunlight, the best disinfectant, and then we're going to find out the best we can, better than what we have right now, what's really going on. And if it is true that the Obama administration willfully and knowledgeably painted a dishonest picture of the incoming Trump administration to discredit it and to wreck it politically, that'll be, in my lifetime, the most heinous crime that has been committed by either party, and it's going to have to be, result in prosecutions if that's the case. Will that happen? Is that possible in our current political system? I don't know. And I say this all the time as a pundit. There's nothing wrong with saying we don't know. There's nothing wrong with it. We got too many people telling me and telling you what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen here. But it is indicative of this reversal of the post-World War II Democrat liberal order. I can certainly see why the purveyors of that order, seeing Donald Trump ride into town, are going to go, man, we got to undermine this guy any way we can, or he's going to overturn the apple cart. And they did a damn good job in that first 45th presidency to undermine President Trump's agenda. Well, he's back now, and he's bringing with him the kind of change that changes our culture and changes our politics for a long time to come. But we're only 6 months in, and it's really not about Trump. Remember, he's reflecting you and me. Could we please be involved, and could we please learn to talk one to another with respect? And could we please learn to talk to people that are on the other side of the football? Because I'm going to say again, we're going to wake up here very shortly, soon, and recognize that this Democrat, liberal, Republican, conservative thing is a complete scam, that the philosophy of the New World Order and the philosophy of republicanism has been eclipsed by this information age, and we have new allies. All of us who want to live well in prosperity and peace are going to have to come together. It may take a little while for this to become clear to everybody. We're going to stay stuck in this fight, but it won't be very long. The robots are going to show up here very soon. And part of this Trump revolution, or evolution still, is a new IRS ruling that is going to allow churches and the preachers in those churches, the rabbis in those synagogues, and the imams in those mosques, they're actually going to be able to endorse candidates. That is a big change. It's a rule proposal. It is likely that this rule will be approved. And at that moment, we got a big change. The churches and synagogues and mosques are nonprofit organizations. They're called 501c3s. And 501c3s are nonprofit organizations that cannot endorse candidates. This goes back to the Johnson Amendment, and that is Lyndon Baines Johnson, who set this current paradigm up in 1954. Well, let's think about this for a second. What happens when your priest, your minister, your preacher, your rabbi can now speak openly about politics when they address the congregation? How's that going to work? Do you go to church? Tanner, I want you to know, I don't go to church.
I don't either.
I don't go to synagogue anymore. So it really doesn't have a lot of an effect on me because I'm not going to be there. But people are going back to church, particularly in your age group. Do you recognize that there's a big return to faith in your age group?
Yeah, I've even been seeing it in music, which makes me really happy that I've noticed a lot of music is starting to talk about concepts of God a lot more and exploring spirituality. So I do think there's a culture shift happening.
There's a culture shift happening, and people are going to be sitting in the pews because they're seeking the search for truth. And you might say, why don't you go? And I'm going to tell you why I don't go. I don't go because I was raised in a traditional Orthodox Jewish family. And I had this experience where I had this revelatory moment with Christ, and there's no place for me to go. Now, the people are going to say, yes, there is. But when I go to those places and I hear melodies and prayers that are not traditional, I don't feel at home. So I'm a little bit rootless, and I'm not planning on starting my own church. So I just pray at home, and it all makes sense to me. I don't fit in very well, although I'm fitting in well with you. So thank you for tolerating me. It's nice to be here with you. We got our own community we got going here. But if you're going to church and you're part of a faith community, your preacher or your minister or your priest is going to very shortly have the ability to preach about politics. I wonder how that's going to go down where you pray. Boy, it's going to reveal some things real quickly that have been hidden. And let me tell you what the fundamental one is. These are businesses. That's right. You're a customer. Because if you don't go and pay your dues, your tithe, because we're supposed to kick in, right? If we don't go and kick in, the business closes. I know that sounds rather crude, but I'm just calling balls and strikes the way I see them. Every religious institution, every community has a building, has a facility, could have a mortgage, has a roof that's got to get replaced. Heat's got to get paid. It has an administrative staff. All those people got to get paid. It has a clergy. It has outreach, the bus that takes people here, there, hither, there, and yon. Every church is like this. Small churches are that way, and giant houses of worship are that way. And now the preacher's going to get up in front of his parishioners, and if he takes a stand or she takes a stand one way or the other, about half the people in the audience are going to get pissed off. They might leave. That could hurt the business of the church or the business of the synagogue. Wow. What a challenge these people now face. Because if they hide and they don't take a position, that's going to piss off a bunch of people. Oh, we got a lively environment now coming up in the churches and synagogues and mosques. Now, of course, in the mosques, I don't have much insight into that. The more traditional, and I'm not saying there aren't reformed mosques. I don't know. I'm not a Muslim, but I can talk about the Jewish community. There's a reformed, there's a conservative, and there's an orthodox. They don't agree politically. It's across a wide spectrum. What's going to happen in here? Wow. And I'm going to make a prediction, and I'm going to tell you it's a prediction because I don't know for sure. It's fortune telling. But I think a lot of these preachers and ministers and priests and rabbis and imams, they're not going to take a position because you're going to piss off your customers. And if you piss off your customers, you could lose your job. Then some other people are going to say, man, you're a sellout to the cash. You're not really preaching the faith. You're in it for the money. Because if you were in it for the faith, you would preach on the faith and you would realize that this religion is really political. Ooh, we got a big change coming up here. A big change. We need to watch this. And if you're in a faith community, when this rule comes down and it's approved, I'll let you know it's proposed. It probably will be approved. And that means in the next political cycle, wherever you pray, the big boss of your congregation, your priest, your minister, your preacher, your rabbi, they can stand up there and say, you know, XYZ is forbidden. Therefore, vote for this candidate because they follow the word. Are you seeing how big a deal this is?
What happened to the separation of church and state?
It's still separate.
But no, it's going the reverse. If the preacher can start talking about who you should vote for, and based on that, isn't that the state going into the church?
No, that'd be the church going into the state. That would be organizing your parishioners to be politically potent, to make your ideology elect people that pursue and promote the ideas that you believe in. But we're not choosing a state religion. That would be verboten under our Constitution. We're not creating a state religion. What we're doing is we're making things obvious now. We're going to find out, and I'm sorry to be so blunt about this, but we're going to find out who's in it for the money. Because if they're in it for the money, they're not going to say anything. Religions are political movements. Judaism is the nation of Israel. It's a political movement. How obvious is it? Take a look at what it's doing. It's a political movement. Christianity, how about the Crusades? I mean, these are political movements. Islam is a political movement. Now we're ripping the Band-Aid off of this thing. We call them religions, but they actually are looking for more participants, just like a political party. They want to convert other people to their way of thinking. We're getting down to it now, aren't we?
Yeah.
Crazy, isn't it?
It's pretty nuts.
So when you're going to your church or your synagogue after this rule's in place and your religious leader has no comment about politics, well, I'll tell you what I would do. I'd raise my hand and I'd say, Rabbi, what about this rule? Who do I vote for? I don't understand. I'd bait them out into the open. And when they'd say, well, you know, we don't want to comment on such a thing, then you know that my rabbi is in it for the cash because he doesn't want to go on the record. That's where we're headed. And if half of these institutions go out of business because what they're selling is a business, that's okay with me. Let's have the institutions that remain be dedicated to teaching the people the search for truth so that people can find the secret place where they can dwell with the Most High. And that's the way we're going to balance out this information age so we don't lose our lives. And on that note, I want to thank you for joining tonight. I feel like I took a week off last week.
Yeah.
Tough to get back into the groove.
It felt a little different recording this one.
Yes, it did.
Yeah.
After coming off of that great podcast with Richard Baris, which if you are a member of the Republican Party of Minnesota, I highly urge you to go back and watch this, and we're going to talk about it more on Thursday night. Anyhow, so much change. So much change is going on. We're going to try to keep up with it. Please stay alert. Get involved. This is not going to work unless we go into the political process. I'm trying to be entertaining. I'm so glad you're with me tonight. I appreciate it. I try to communicate with you. Many of you know I'm sincere about that. But we've got to take this community and get it out into the streets, as Susan says, to the streets, so that we follow through and maintain this republic and get back to having the freedom that was promised to us in our great Constitution. Thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you again on Thursday night.
Have a good night, everybody.